that strengthened it. And so here we are. And we're here today to really celebrate the passage of this significant piece of anti-hate crime legislation, anti-hate legislation that will address the racially motivated violence and bigotry. It's just turns your stomach that we've seen so far too often in the wake of COVID-19. I've attended probably a dozen rallies in New York, in different parts of New York, and I hear the stories. And these are not, we hear the stories, regrettably, of someone being killed in California and someone being slashed in New York. But every day people are experiencing this kind of bigotry. And an elderly man told me he's afraid to walk down the street in the house where he lives because he's been cursed at and spat upon. And a young lady told me she no longer rides the subways because the stairs were so mean and forbidding. And those two stories can be repeated thousands of times over each day in every state. So we must do something, and today we did. And this legislation sends a dual message to our Asian American community. We will not tolerate violence and bigotry against you. And to those who perpetrate the violence and bigotry, we're going to pursue you to the full extent of the law. It's a dual message. It's a 1-2, and it's needed. Let me just say that I want to thank our Asian American community throughout the country who has rallied strongly to say they're not going to take this anymore. I want to thank them for their steadfastness, for their belief in America, for their strength, and for their persistence. And I want to really thank our two Asian American women senators, Senator Hirono and Duckworth, for the great job they've done. And just a shout out across the chamber to my dear friend Grace Meng, who has led the charge so ably in the House. And I want to thank Senator Blumenthal, as well as some of our Republican senators who helped improve this legislation. We showed that bipartisan legislating can work on a significant piece of legislation. And I want to thank Senator Collins and Senator Scott and Senator Grassley, and certainly Senator Moran, who worked closely with Senator Blumenthal. And next week, we're going to move to the water bill, which we believe, again, can be bipartisan. And the week we return, we're going to try to move to the American Competitiveness Act, which it can also be bipartisan. This chamber can work in a bipartisan fashion and get things done. And I aim as leader to make that happen as much as we can. That doesn't mean we forgo our principles. That doesn't mean we cut back on the boldness that is needed. But it means we try to work with our Republican colleagues whenever we can. So I want to thank my colleagues, and I want to call on Senator Hirono. And I want to find my mask. Here it is.
Very important mask.
It is.
Yes. Thank you, Leader Schumer, and of course to my two colleagues who are standing here beside me who worked really hard and to really expand the support for this bill and the reach of this bill. I cannot tell you how important this bill is to the AAPI community, who often has felt very invisible in our country, always seen as foreign, always seen as the other. And for them to experience a kind of hatred against them through no provocation on their part, to be the victims of unprovoked, just random assaults on them as they are minding their own business in the subways, grocery stores, takeout restaurants, on the street. This bill, I would say, just as important as the substance of the bill and what we hope to do by gathering the kind of data we need, that as important as the content and substance of the bill is the message of this bill, that we in the Senate are going to stand with our AAPI community, and indeed any community that is discriminated against on the basis of race or any of the categories that you and I can think of. So in a really strong vote, 94-1. Wow, when was the last time we saw that? So I'm really glad that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and of course mentioned Susan Collins, Jerry Moran, Grassley, and Scott, that they saw what they needed to do and they did it. And as I said, the important thing for our AAPI community is that we stand with you, and we will continue to stand with you to prevent these kinds of crimes from happening in our country. So as we say in Hawaii, mahalo nui loa to everyone.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. Well, about 3 weeks ago, my 80-year-old mom came home from the grocery store, visibly upset, because and I asked her what had happened, and she had been harassed by the grocery store clerk who kept pushing her away as she was trying to buy some grapes. And she was trying to pick out grapes, and she was told, go stand over there. And so she moved over, and they said, no, go stand over there. And they just kept hassling her, and this happens all the time. And my mom finally confronted the grocery store clerk and said, listen, I'm just here to buy grapes for my granddaughter's lunch. I'm not here to fight you. Just let me buy the grapes. And this bill will allow me to go home and tell my mom we did something about it. And this bill tells the AAPI community, who are seen as the other, who are often asked, where are you from, really? And I've had that happen to me while wearing the uniform of this nation with her flag on my shoulder, been asked, where are you from, really? Yeah, your dad has been here since before the revolution, but where are you from? This tells the AAPI community, we see you, and we will stand with you, and we will protect you. There's a lot more work to be done. This is a good first step. I want to thank everyone who voted for this bill, and and for Mazie for taking the lead, and for Senator Blumenthal for working so hard with his excellent amendment and his work with Jerry Moran. I'm just so thankful to my Tri-Caucus colleagues who have worked together on this issue, and I urge all of my colleagues today to go out home and talk about this so that all of the AAPIs in their communities know that they are seen and that they are now protected as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Blumenthal.
Let me get out of your way. Sorry, Dick.
That's all right. Take your time. Thanks. Well, first of all, let me thank my amazing colleagues. You know, the definition of courage, grace under pressure. Senators Hirono and Duckworth really epitomize it. So thank you to them. And thank you to Senator Schumer for his leadership. He laid it on the line. He made it happen. And it's his leadership that brought us here today. And a tremendous coalition of groups. I want to pay tribute to the AAPI coalition, but an even broader coalition who have witnessed these kinds of absolutely abhorrent instances of bias and prejudice expressed through violence. The no-hate bill had a long road to get here. I introduced it last session after I saw and heard bullet holes in mosques, swastikas on synagogues, nooses in locker rooms directed against African Americans, and of course the surge in violence that we've seen against Asian Americans. And I want to thank my colleague, Senator Moran, for his bipartisanship. Don't anyone say that we can't do bills, important bills, big bills, bipartisan bills in the United States Senate. When American values are on the line, we can do them. And the kind of action that we've seen today will enable more reporting, which is more prosecution and more deterrence. We know deterrence is necessary because of the surge in numbers, but also Khalid Jabara and Heather Heyer. The no-hate bill is named for them. The anniversary of their deaths, 5 and 4 years ago, should remind us of the work that we have still to do against bigotry and bias and hate crimes in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. We'll take questions. Henny? Yes.
Senator Blumenthal was just talking about the importance of more prosecution and more deterrence. Some people found
Well,
Are you open to tightening
well, we certainly look at any other alternatives, but when you have someone placed in the Justice Department whose sole job is to focus on anti-Asian violence, pointing it out and recommending where prosecution is appropriate, I believe this will greatly increase prosecution against against those who have anti-Asian violence, who perpetrate it.
It also provides for better penalties. It provides for hotlines for local prosecutors. It provides for training. Yes, more reporting, but also strengthening law enforcement against it. And it expresses this administration's determination. An attorney general who said in his confirmation hearing, in response to our questions, hate crimes tear at the fabric of America. He is committed to enforce hate crimes prohibition.
Yes?
Semi-related question.
Okay.
Semi-related because it's about bipartisanship, which this was a big bipartisan accomplishment.
Yes.
I would like to, do you see any path forward for a smaller, targeted, bipartisan infrastructure bill and allow Democrats to do
Look,
their priorities in this?
let me say two things. First, we believe we need big, bold legislation. We believe it has to be green. We believe that should not be the paying for it should not be on the backs of working people. But we're willing to work with Republicans whenever we can to achieve that goal. But big, bold legislation is our number one goal.
Can you respond to the Republican proposal?
Well, I haven't seen it yet. The devil is in the details. But as I said, any infrastructure proposal has to be green and cannot be paid for on the backs of working people. We'll see what their proposal does. I haven't studied it yet. Yes?
Is there a path to similar bipartisanship on police reform? Some of the talks have been putting limits on qualified immunity to
Well,
Republicans.
yep.
How do you feel about that? And do you see a path to getting that?
Look, I've encouraged Senator Booker to talk to Senator Scott and see if they can come up with something. They are making progress. I'm not going to get into the details of their discussions. But if we could come up with a strong bill that deals with the systemic bias that's been in our police forces for far too long, that would be great. So I've encouraged them to talk to one another, and their discussions are making some progress. Yes. Yes, next.
Just to follow up on that question, Representative Bass today suggested that leadership may soon formally bless the group to lead discussions on policing reform. Is that something you're anticipating announcing soon? And I know you've mentioned—
I've already encouraged, I've talked to Senator Booker on numerous occasions and encouraged him to talk to Senator Scott. So it's something I welcome.
Are there other members that you think should be in those conversations?
That will be, there are some others who are being involved, yes. But Senator Booker is taking the lead. Yes?
Do you anticipate a similar amendment process on the water bill next week?
We'd like to, look, I hope we can have amendments on these bills. They should be germane. They shouldn't be gotcha amendments. But of course we entertain amendments on the water bill. Now, the water bill came out of committee to the credit of Chairman Carper and Ranking Member Capito unanimously. It's a significant bill. It has broad support in the country. And of course we welcome amendments to make it, to improve it. And we hope we'll spend a good number of days next week on that bill.
Leader Schumer, do you expect prescription drugs and health care to be included in Biden's proposal next week?
You know, you'll have to, I'm going to wait till President Biden makes his presentation.
Leader Schumer, do you have any timeline, or do you expect to actually bring a D.C. statehood bill to the floor of the Senate?
Look, D.C. statehood is something I strongly believe in. We're going to do everything we can to pass it. Yes?
Following up, do you support the statehood or the self-determination bills for Puerto Rico?
I haven't seen the specific, there are two bills actually out there. My view is this: there has to be a fair process undergone to determine what the Puerto Rican people want, and we would follow their lead. We have a lot of divisions within the Puerto Rican community now is what the future should be. Yes. Did you have one already? I want to call on people who hadn't asked. No. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Leader Schumer, Senator Duckworth had said this bill is a good first step, so what should the next steps?
Well, we're going to look at everything and look at suggestions. This is a strong bill, make no mistake about it. And as I said, it sends a signal to our Asian American community that we stand with you, and to the bigots that we're going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law. And it has some very significant provisions and has been strengthened as we've been on the floor. If there are other things that people think are needed, we'll look at them very carefully. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice weekend. Thank you for coming.
Good job.
Thank you. You too. You too.